The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the vast expanse of the desert. As the friends drove deeper into this barren landscape, the air grew thick with a sense of anticipation and unease. The once vibrant colors of the world faded into muted tones, as if nature itself had abandoned hope. In the distance, the ghost town emerged like a mirage, a silhouette against the shimmering heat waves that distorted reality. Crumbling buildings stood sentinel over the ruins of a forgotten era, their weathered facades peeling away to reveal the decay beneath. Windows gaped like empty eyes, their glass long shattered, while doors creaked on rusted hinges, hinting at the stories they could tell if only they could speak. Dust danced in the air, caught in the fading light, wrapping everything in an ethereal glow that heightened the sense of desolation. Silence enveloped the town, interrupted only by the occasional whisper of wind that seemed to carry echoes of laughter and sorrow from days gone by. It was a silence that felt alive, tinged with something almost sentient, as if the very ground beneath their feet was saturated with memories of those who once called this place home. The friends exchanged uneasy glances, their excitement curdling into apprehension. They were intruders in a realm steeped in forgotten lives. As they stepped out of their vehicle, the oppressive stillness wrapped around them like a shroud. It was here, among the remnants of what was once a bustling community, that they felt the weight of history pressing down upon them. The ghost town was not just a series of empty structures, it was a monument to loss, whispering haunting secrets that begged to be unearthed. With hesitant steps, they began their exploration, each footfall stirring dust and dreams long buried in this deserted sanctuary. As the vehicle rolled along the cracked asphalt, the friends buzzed with excitement, their laughter echoing inside the car. There was Jake, the adventurous spirit, always seeking out the unusual and the unknown. Next to him sat Lily, whose curiosity rivaled his. She loved history and had read about ghost towns, igniting her passion for uncovering their stories. In the back seat, Mark leaned against the window, quietly skeptical yet intrigued, while Zoe snapped pictures with her camera, eager to capture every moment of their journey. "Did you guys know this town was abandoned after a mining collapse?" Lily exclaimed, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm as she flipped through a guidebook. "They say some people never left," her voice trailed off, leaving a shiver of intrigue hanging in the air. While excitement filled the car, an undercurrent of tension simmered beneath the surface. Mark shot a furtive glance at Jake when he suggested they spend the night in the ghost town. "Are you serious? You want to camp in a place like that?" His tone was cautious, revealing his discomfort with Jake's thrill-seeking impulses. "We'll be fine. It's all part of the adventure," Jake insisted, determination lacing his words. The conflicting views began to sow seeds of doubt among them. Zoe glanced nervously at Lily, sensing the unease growing within the group. As they approached the ghost town, the initial thrill of discovery started to wane. Each friend grappled with their own fears and expectations for what lay ahead. They parked outside a dilapidated building that loomed like a specter in the fading light, its presence magnifying their apprehensions. With hearts racing yet fueled by curiosity, they stepped out into the quiet desert evening, ready to explore but unaware of how their journey would test not just their bravery but their bonds as well. As they continued their drive through the seemingly endless desert, Lily rummaged through the car's glove compartment, searching for a map. Instead, her hand brushed against something cool and metallic. Pulling it out, she revealed an old radio, its surface scratched and dusty but oddly intact. "Hey, check this out," she called, holding it up as the others leaned in for a closer look. Jake's eyes lit up with mischief. "Let's see if it works." He reached over to turn the knob. With a twist and a crackle, the radio came to life, filling the car with static that warped into haunting melodies. At first, they laughed, their voices mingling with the strange sounds emanating from the speaker. But then the music shifted abruptly to distorted whispers and unsettling noises that seemed to resonate with their growing anxiety. As each wave of noise crashed over them, it felt as if the radio was reflecting their innermost fears, echoing doubts about the journey ahead and unspoken tensions within the group. "What is this?" Mark asked, brow furrowing as he looked at Jake with unease. "Can you turn it off?" But Jake was transfixed by the unsettling transmission. The radio began to play snippets of disjointed voices that sounded like cries for help and distant screams, chilling them to their core. Lily clutched her arms around herself as shivers raced down her spine. "This doesn't feel right," she murmured, glancing at Zoe, who was visibly shaken. Each friend sat in silence, absorbed in their own thoughts as the eerie sounds enveloped them like a fog. Finally, Jake turned the dial again in an attempt to find something else, but instead of relief, they were met with more cries that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. The radio had transformed from a simple curiosity into a harbinger of dread, intensifying their apprehension as they approached the ghost town. Little did they know that this unsettling soundtrack would guide them deeper into mysteries they were not prepared to face. As they parked the car, an eerie stillness enveloped them, thickening the air with an almost tangible weight. The sun hung low on the horizon, casting long shadows over the ghost town that awaited them just beyond their vehicle. The structures loomed in the fading light, a disarray of crumbling walls and broken windows that seemed to watch their every move. Stepping out of the car, Jake was the first to break the silence, his adventurous spirit undeterred. "This is it. Look at those buildings," he exclaimed, gesturing animatedly toward what remained of the once bustling community. But even as he spoke, a shiver ran down Lily's spine as she caught sight of a dilapidated saloon whose sign hung precariously by one rusted hinge. It swayed gently in the breeze, producing a creaking sound that sent a chill through her. Mark hesitated at the edge of the car door, his skepticism re-emerging. "I don't like this place," he muttered under his breath as he stepped into the sand. The dry ground crunched beneath their feet, and a sense of foreboding settled among them like a blanket. Zoe tugged at her camera strap nervously, glancing around as if expecting someone or something to emerge from the shadows. For all its haunting beauty, the ghost town exuded an unsettling presence. The corners of each building beckoned with stories long forgotten, yet they also whispered warnings that made it hard for any of them to shake off their unease. They stood together for a moment, hearts pounding in unison as anticipation mixed with apprehension. "Should we split up?" Jake suggested cheerfully, trying to lighten the mood. But his words only deepened their apprehension. Despite his bravado, even he sensed an unnameable dread hanging heavy in the air. With hesitant steps forward, they began their exploration of this deserted sanctuary, a place where forgotten lives and lingering whispers waited just beyond reach. With hesitant steps, the group made their way toward the nearest building, a dilapidated general store that still boasted a faded sign swinging above its entrance. Pushing the heavy door open, they were greeted by a rush of stale air that carried with it the scent of dust and decay. Sunlight streamed through broken windows, illuminating a collection of forgotten items strewn across the floor, remnants of lives once lived. "Look at this!" Zoe exclaimed, picking up an old bottle with a peeling label from behind the counter. The inscription hinted at its original purpose, a long-gone tonic for ailments. It was a trivial find, yet in their current context, it felt profound. Each piece they uncovered seemed to tell a story waiting to be heard. They moved deeper into the store, brushing past shelves lined with rusted cans and broken glass. In one corner, Jake stumbled upon a dust-covered photograph stuck between two boards. As he held it up to the light, they gasped collectively. The image depicted a group of smiling townsfolk on what seemed to be a festive day in the early 1900s. Their joy contrasted starkly with the present desolation. "Imagine what this place was like back then," Lily mused softly, her eyes lingering on the happy faces frozen in time. "It must have been vibrant." The exploration ignited curiosity within them as they ventured from building to building. An abandoned schoolhouse bathed in ghostly light, where crumbling blackboards still bore faint remnants of lessons long forgotten. An old church with wooden pews slowly succumbing to rot but holding on to whispers of prayers and congregations. With each discovery, faded photographs, weathered toys, and handwritten letters, they felt an unreciprocated connection to those who once inhabited this town. Yet beneath their growing intrigue lay an undercurrent of sadness and loss, a reminder that history is not just about what remains but also about what has vanished forever. As they moved through each shadowed room and empty hallway, the weight of past stories clung to them like an echo they couldn't quite shake off. As the group ventured deeper into the ghost town, Jake retrieved the old radio from the car, convinced they should bring it along to accompany their exploration. He turned it on, and at first, the garbled sounds filtered through its speakers felt oddly comforting amidst the desolation. However, as they moved past the abandoned schoolhouse and toward a crumbling hotel, the air shifted, and so did the radio's tone. Suddenly, ominous music began to emanate from the small device, dissonant chords that seemed to resonate with an unsettling energy in the atmosphere. Distorted voices blended with the notes, whispering fragments of sentences that sent chills running down their spines. The friends exchanged uneasy glances. It felt as if the radio was tuning into their collective anxiety, amplifying unspoken fears and insecurities. "Can you hear that?" Lily said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It sounds like," but she couldn't finish her thought as more chilling whispers emerged, drowning out her words. Mark's face paled as he grasped at his own doubts. "This is just noise," he tried to convince himself, but the intensity of the sounds pressed against him like a heavy fog. The tension escalated when snippets of personal secrets seemed to float in and out of clarity through the static, echoes of arguments long buried and unresolved feelings that found voice in that haunted space. "Jake, turn it off. It's too creepy." Zoe exclaimed, her hand shaking slightly as she tugged at his sleeve. But he hesitated. Part of him was drawn in by the allure of what they might discover through this eerie soundtrack. In that moment of indecision, hidden tensions erupted. Mark confronted Jake about his reckless bravado while Zoe admitted she felt scared about camping overnight. Each word hung in the air heavily as if the radio had unearthed more than just memories, it had exposed their vulnerabilities. The atmosphere thickened with raw emotions, creating an invisible barrier between them as they stood surrounded by whispers of both past and present, unsure of what would unfold next in this haunted town. As night descended upon the ghost town, the atmosphere thickened with a palpable unease that crept into their bones. The shadows cast by the fading light began to take on an unsettling life of their own. Jake, unable to shake off the ominous feeling permeating the air, suggested they turn off the radio. But as soon as silence returned, it was replaced by the haunting echoes of things unseen. "Did you see that?" Lily's voice trembled as she pointed toward a window in the abandoned saloon. A fleeting shadow seemed to dart past, vanishing before they could fully comprehend it. Mark's heart raced. He instinctively took a step back, his earlier skepticism replaced by a creeping dread. "It was probably just a trick of the light," he muttered, but his voice lacked conviction. As they moved cautiously through the town, strange noises punctuated the stillness, soft whispers brushing against their ears like wisps of wind, yet they were lacking any breeze to carry them. Zoe felt her skin prickle, an instinctual warning flaring up within her as she heard what sounded like footsteps echoing where no one stood. She turned to face her friends, her eyes wide with alarm. "Are we really alone here?" In their exploration of what had once been the town's church, a sudden clatter reverberated from behind them. An old chair had toppled over without anyone touching it. The noise sent all four friends jumping, hearts pounding in unison as adrenaline surged through them. Each glance exchanged carried unspoken questions. Were they witnessing echoes of the past or something much more sinister? The feeling of being watched intensified as they ventured further into the heart of the ghost town, shadows lengthening and intertwining around them like fingers grasping for attention. As if responding to their growing fear and uncertainty, flashes of movement in their periphery darted away just before they could focus on them. Fleeting glimpses that raised hair on their arms and left them questioning whether the legends of this haunted place were more than mere stories. With every unexplained sound and flickering shadow, trust among them started to fray alongside their courage, igniting an anxious energy that pulled tighter around them. They had come seeking adventure but were now ensnared in an atmosphere dense with fear, a realization that perhaps this ghost town held secrets better left undisturbed. As the tension in the ghost town escalated, the radio crackled to life once more, its distorted whispers weaving through the air. Suddenly Lily's voice emerged clearly from the static, calling out for them. "Guys, come here. You have to hear this," she exclaimed, almost entranced by something that seemed to pull her away from the group. Before they could react, she turned and moved toward an old, crumbling chapel at the edge of the town. Alarm bells echoed in Mark's mind as he shouted after her, "Lily, wait!" But she was already lost to them, drawn in by a seductive sound that only she could hear. Panic surged through the remaining friends as they exchanged frantic glances, a rush of dread flooding their veins. "Where did she go?" Zoe asked, her voice rising with fear. The three of them dashed toward the chapel, their hearts pounding with every step. "She wouldn't just wander off like this," Jake muttered, a hollow feeling settling in his stomach. They called out her name into the growing darkness, but their voices were swallowed by the oppressive quiet, only punctuated by the faint sounds from the radio that echoed eerily in the background. As they reached the entrance, shadows flickered just outside their vision, dark shapes darting between buildings as if watching their every move. Mark's skepticism began to dissolve into paranoia. Every creak of wood and rustle of wind felt threatening, like whispers urging them to turn back. "Did you hear that?" Jake said suddenly, his eyes wide with fear as he pointed into the distance. Shadows seemed to extend toward them with an insidious intent. The pressure of fear built around them, skirting along their minds and twisting into hallucinations. "Lily," they cried again, desperation lacing their voices as they stepped cautiously into the chapel's shadowy interior. A sudden noise from behind sent them spinning around. Nothing stood there, but in that moment of disorientation they realized with horror how easily they could become lost in this haunted place themselves. Panic settled over them like a shroud as they understood they were not just searching for their friend but also struggling against the very real threat of being consumed by their own fears and perhaps something far more sinister lurking within the ghost town's depths. Inside the chapel, the air was thick with tension as Jake, Mark, and Zoe followed the faint echoes of Lily's voice, which seemed to emanate from the radio itself. It crackled ominously, warping their surroundings into a nightmarish landscape filled with shadows and shifting shapes. "Lily!" Mark shouted again, his heart pounding as dread threatened to consume him. The radio suddenly blared to life with an eerie static that morphed into distorted voices speaking fragments of their deepest fears. "You don't belong here," one voice hissed, chilling them to the core. Zoe clutched her arms tightly, glancing nervously at Jake and Mark. "It can't know," she mumbled, trailing off as they all realized the truth of her words. As they moved further inside the chapel, more whispers erupted from the radio, truths they had long buried erupted like a dam breaking free. Jake's bravado faltered as he heard words echoing his doubts. "You're just a coward." The accusation stung painfully, forcing him to confront the reality of his reckless behavior and its impact on his friends. Mark's face paled as a distinct voice accused him of always pushing everyone away, exposing his fear of intimacy and vulnerability. "No, that's not true," he yelled, but the conviction in his voice wavered under the strain of self-doubt. Zoe found herself overwhelmed by the weight of her own insecurities. Memories surfaced that hurled accusations of inadequacy at her. "You'll never be enough," resonated through her mind like a taunting refrain. In this intense confrontation with their inner demons and growing supernatural occurrences around them, their bonds began to splinter under pressure. As shadows danced around them and reality blurred with nightmarish visions, they realized they were not only fighting for Lily's return, but also for their very sense of self amid tangible manifestations of their fears. Summoning every ounce of courage left within them, they huddled together, determined to face whatever awaited them. The haunting sounds from the radio persisted, echoing their regrets and fears back at them, a grim reminder that in order to escape this ghost town, they needed to confront both their past mistakes and the darkness that lurked within themselves. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of facing their fears and insecurities, the friends regrouped in the chapel. Lily emerged from the shadows, visibly shaken but alive. The moment they spotted her, relief washed over them like a tide, momentarily washing away the terror that had gripped their hearts. "I heard you calling," she explained breathlessly, still somewhat entranced by the messages from the radio. "It was like something was pulling me in." The group quickly shared their harrowing experiences, the echoes of their fears that had threatened to tear them apart. They stood together, breathing deeply, recognizing how interconnected their struggles had become amid the chaos of the ghost town. United by survival and understanding, they knew it was time to leave this haunting place behind. As they stepped outside into the cool night air, the oppressive atmosphere began to lift slightly. It felt as if the shadows that had loomed over them were receding, granting them a brief reprieve. The radio crackled one last time, whispering distorted words that no longer held power over them. They had faced those truths and emerged stronger together. Climbing back into their vehicle, a sense of determination replaced the dread that had once enveloped them. Jake took a deep breath and turned the key in the ignition. The engine roared to life, drowning out any remnants of fear lingering in the air. As they drove away from the ghost town, memories of flickering shadows and chilling whispers faded into the distance. The landscape transitioned from haunted ruins to familiar desert terrain, yet they were forever changed by their experience. The journey would remain etched in their minds, not just as an adventure gone awry but as a testament to their resilience and newfound bond. In unison, they exchanged glances filled with unspoken understanding, a reminder of what they had faced together. They had entered seeking thrills but left with a profound sense of self-awareness and camaraderie that would endure beyond this nightmarish encounter. Together, they ventured onward into the unknown, united and ready to embrace whatever lay ahead. As they drove back through the desert, the vast landscape stretched out before them, a stark contrast to the emotional turmoil they had just endured. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, but the beauty of the sunset was tempered by an unsettling silence that hung in the air. Inside the car, the radio, once a source of haunting whispers and chilling revelations, had fallen silent, leaving behind an eerie calm that felt both comforting and disquieting. Jake glanced at his friends, their expressions reflecting a mixture of relief and lingering unease. "I can't believe we made it out," he said quietly, breaking the silence that enveloped them. Lily nodded, her mind racing with memories of their harrowing experiences. "It felt so real, like we were truly haunted," she replied, her voice trailing off as she gazed out at the passing scenery. Mark shifted in his seat, his thoughts weighing heavy on him. "We face things we never wanted to confront," he murmured, still processing his own vulnerabilities laid bare in that chapel. The realization that they had come face to face not only with supernatural phenomena but also their own fears created a deep bond among them, a connection forged in fire. Zoe broke the tension with a thoughtful observation. "I think we learned more about ourselves than we expected. We can't hide from our fears forever." Her words resonated in the cramped space of the car as they each reflected on how their personal struggles intertwined during their ordeal. As the ghost town faded into the rearview mirror, it became clear that this journey had changed them irrevocably. They had entered seeking adventure but emerged with profound insights about themselves and what it meant to lean on one another for support. Yet even as they drove away, a sense of dread lingered, an awareness that their encounter with darkness had left a mark. While they were united in survival, they could not shake off the feeling that echoes of their fears might still follow them into the future. As stars began to dot the night sky, they leaned into this unsettling peace, ready to face whatever awaited them next on this unpredictable journey called life. As they drove further away from the ghost town, the landscape transformed into a blur of dark silhouettes against the twilight sky. The haunting memories of their ordeal clung to them like a shroud, unsettling yet profoundly impactful. An unspoken tension hung in the air, mingling with the remnants of fear that still lingered in their minds. In silence, they passed through stretches of emptiness where the last rays of sunlight dipped below the horizon, leaving a tapestry of stars shimmering above them. Just as they began to feel a semblance of normalcy return, Jake cast a glance back through the rearview mirror. For a brief moment, he caught sight of the ghost town, its crumbling buildings nestled within shadows, and almost sorrowful presence against the backdrop of the night. "Do you think it's really over?" he asked, breaking the silence. His voice held a tremor that revealed his lingering doubts. "What if something followed us?" The question hung heavy in the air, sending a shiver down Zoe's spine. She exchanged nervous glances with Lily and Mark, who both seemed lost in their own thoughts. While they had confronted their fears in the chapel, the idea that other mysteries remained unresolved left an unsettling edge to their newfound camaraderie. As they continued on their path, the radio unexpectedly crackled back to life, breaking the stillness with a soft hiss before slipping back into silence. The friends shared cautious looks. Was it merely a glitch or something more sinister? They couldn't shake off the sensation that some part of their experience was still lurking somewhere between reality and memory. With the night deepening around them, each friend wrestled with questions left unanswered. What truly haunted them, the events of that night or the echoes of their past? And what would await them when they finally returned home? The road ahead seemed uncertain, but one thing was clear: they would forever carry the weight of that ghost town in their hearts, a reminder that some stories might never truly end.